Welcome back to Poland Daily History with me, Nicolas Richardson. And in the studio this morning, we have Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka to talk about the early years of Poland following its regaining of independence at the end of the First World War. Professor Jabłonka, a key moment in the new Poland was the Polish Bolshevik War of 1920. Could you say a few words about the significance of the war, both for the new Poland and for Europe as a whole?
My jako Polacy jesteśmy przekonani, że to jest jedna z trzech największych bitew naszej historii.
We, as Poles, are convinced that this is one of the three greatest battles of our history. Grunwald in the Middle Ages, the Battle of Vienna in the Baroque, which saved Central Europe. Now it was saving our independence, but from the extremely dangerous opponent of communism at that time, or Bolshevism in the Russian edition, we saved the heart of Europe. The war takes place in quite complicated circumstances, when the German troops, after losing the First War, withdraw and the front moves from the east. We managed it, and with all our strength, we pushed this current quite far east. One more thing remained, the lack of peace with the Bolsheviks, and they wanted to make peace on false principles, caused the Poles to decide to support the independence action of Ukraine, which led to the liberation of Kiev. Together, Polish and Ukrainian forces liberated the capital of Ukraine. Then came the retaliation prepared for half a year.
Pół roku, najpierw w maju pierwsze uderzenie armii Tuchaczewskiego.
First in May was the first blow of the Tukhachevsky Bolshevik army, and then from areas of the Caucasus, Siberia, powerful armed forces gathered both on horseback and by train. About 1,000 trains entered Poland at the time. A giant offensive began on July 4th, 1920.
Polacy nie byli w stanie już tego powstrzymać i dopiero Wisła stała się tą granicą, na której
The Poles could not stop it anymore, and Wisła became the border where we stopped the offensive. But Józef Piłsudski was not fooled by the laments of many politicians and prepared the trap. He simply let the Bolshevik army go west, while he himself lurched south and struck from south to north, in the so-called soft underbelly. The Bolshevik army simply fell apart. 60,000 fled east through German Prussia. It was such a triumphant victory, a last-chance battle. If we lost it, we would lose our independence. Even worse, Europe at the time, and especially Germany, were susceptible to communist propaganda. The phenomenon of Poland was that we had known Russia well for 300 years, and we knew that there was nothing good for us there.
Europy myślał, że stamtąd idzie ideologia, a nie wroga armia.
West Europe thought that ideology was coming from there, not an enemy army. Italy, Germany, France could survive a civil war, such as Spain later, just when the Soviet army entered, practically saving Poland. This was mainly what Poles thought and what we were interested in, but by the way of God's providence, we saved Europe. The order issued by Tukhachevsky was to get to the heart of Europe over the dead body of Poland. We were that heart. The heart that has survived and shielded Europe has allowed it to flourish in at least one decade. When Poland fell in 1939, the war engulfed the whole world.
W 1939 roku wojna ogarnęła cały świat.
So it was a key moment in saving Europe from the Bolshevik menace moving.
Słusznie
Lord D'Abernon rightly noticed that the significance of a battle is not judged by its course. There are battles that are very complex, but they bring nothing. What would happen if it took a different course? Imagine if the Greeks lost the Battle of Marathon, or the Romans the battle with the Phoenicians. Then they would rule the world. The same applies here. A win against the Bolsheviks, who were still very dangerous because they were the pan-armed forces that did not count on their own lives, let alone someone else's. Poles would oppose ideological fanaticism, not by means of fanaticism, but patriotism. It means honestly loving family.
Nie fanatyzm, a patriotyzm.
So that was the war, Professor. Could you say a few words now about the Treaty of Riga and what that meant in terms of territory for Poland and the general setting, the peaceful setting in that part of Europe?
Traktat ryski jest dopełnieniem traktatu wersalskiego.
The Riga Treaty supplements the Versailles Treaty, although it is 2 years late. It should be added here that the Poles, concluding the truce on October 18, 1920, were convinced that peace would soon be concluded, because even territorial matters were not so important and exchanges of prisoners were not made.
Woli bolszewickiej na Syberii dostała się cała polska dywizja, która nie zdała...
In the winter of 1920, the entire Polish division got into Bolshevik captivity in Siberia and did not manage to retreat east. This was around 10,000 people. We are certain that by the next winter, half did not survive. It was a matter of a quick exchange of prisoners. Unfortunately, the Soviet side began to delay and finally gave the Polish delegation a difficult choice to make. Many things had to be given up in order to make a lasting peace before the plebiscite in Silesia. It was important. In 1 week, actually 4 days, 3 important things happened. The constitution was adopted by the Sejm, peace was concluded with Russia in Riga, and finally a plebiscite in Silesia. During these negotiations, the Poles made a mistake. They did not secure the necessary payments that the Russian state was to grant to the Polish state because of its participation in the economic life of the Tsarist state. We are talking about the sum of 30 million rubles in gold. Ultimately, Poles had to choose whether they prefer rubles and gold or a secure return of their national treasures. We chose our culture. We received the Jagiellonian tapestries, the Szczerbiec, but many things still remain in Russia to be picked up under the Riga Treaty. However, we never got the 30 million mentioned.
Milionów nigdyśmy po prostu nie dostali.
Well, Professor, that's been fascinating. Thank you very much for coming to the studio. Thank you for watching Poland Daily History. Join us again when we look at more exciting episodes from the history of Poland.